SKOL Vikings, let's win this game.
Vikings fan, what's happening in the halls of Minnesota right now is anything but normal. There's real heat around upgrading the run game. There's a guy on this roster who turned into the best kind of problem because the offense is trusting him more and more. There's also a big name getting dragged into the spotlight because of money. And in the middle of all that, the Giants just made a signing that could mess with the Vikings defense. All that and more, you're getting it right now. But before we dive into all of it, quick thing, subscribe to the channel, it's free, and it helps a ton to keep this community rolling. Hit the like button too, because that tells YouTube to push this video to more people in purple and gold, and it helps you get the next one. Let's go. Look at how fast this conversation is heating up for next year. Alex K. over at Bleacher Report dropped a list saying the best landing spot for Breece Hall could be Minnesota. I read it and had to bring it straight to you. Back in 2024, this team lived on the ground game. Sam Darnold could breathe when Aaron Jones was healthy and carrying the load. But 2025 became a different story. The run game stalled out. And then J.J. McCarthy, in his first year as the starter, started taking heat and pressure nonstop. And he still has to solve a lot with his arm. The logic in that piece is pretty simple. Aaron Jones is already on the other side of 30, and he missed a big chunk of the season after playing every game in 2024. If the team cuts him, it creates real cap room. People are talking about more than $7 million freed up. Then you've got Jordan Mason, who can help in a pinch. But he doesn't have the track record of being the guy for a full season. He has only a handful of starts across his career, and when the workload climbs, his body has shown signs. To me, that's the annoying warning light. We've seen this movie before. Now look at Hall. The Jets have been a mess in 2025, sure, but the kid is producing. He's over 1,200 total yards. He's averaging 5 yards every touch. That's real explosiveness, and the detail people forget is availability. Yes, he tore up his knee back then, but he came back fast. He played all 17 games the next season. He missed just one game last year, and this year he's been steady too. In today's NFL, that matters a lot. A running back who disappears constantly kills the whole offensive plan. Now let me say this clearly, adding a player at that level changes how defenses have to play you. It opens up play action, it takes weight off McCarthy's shoulders, and it helps the offensive line because Hall threatens the edge and the inside, plus he can catch too. That gives you an easy outlet when things get messy. But I can't stop thinking about one question. What's that price tag in a market that keeps climbing? And does this staff really want to pay big for a running back? Or do they prefer the draft and a cheaper rotation? I know how the purple and gold crowd thinks. Half of you are yelling, "Go get him." The other half is thinking about a contract that turns into regret. I'm stuck in the middle. If the price is right, I'm in. And moves like that show ambition, no doubt. And this is the kind of fan read you don't get from a cold recap. Around here, we talk like people who live and breathe Vikings football every single day. I want to hear it from you. Would you pay for Breece Hall, or would you go with the cheaper plan? Don't bounce, because the next story is about Jalen Nailor. He became a trust guy for McCarthy, and that could turn into a heavy decision in 2026. Man, Jalen Nailor put the coaching staff in a corner that nobody expected at the start of the year. We all knew Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison would be the top duo. That part is set. The question was always this: who holds down that third spot when the game gets tight? And Nailor showed up at the perfect time, right as J.J. McCarthy is learning the hard way. Dustin Baker from Vikings territory shared something that lines up with what we're seeing on Sundays. The staff has believed in Nailor for years, even when the numbers didn't pop. Now they're popping. He's cleaner in his roots. He's more reliable with his hands. And he's playing with a different kind of confidence. That 50-50 ball that used to look shaky, he attacks it now. That changes everything for a young quarterback. And here's the other part. Quarterbacks remember who shows up when the clock is swallowing you. McCarthy has been up and down. That's normal. But you can feel it. In messy moments, he looks for Nailor. Having a trusted target outside the obvious names is gold, especially when the offensive line is patched together, and you have to get the ball out fast. Now comes the real dilemma. The Vikings used premium draft capital on Ty Felton. You can't pretend that doesn't matter. The plan was clear. This kid becomes wide receiver 3. But the locker room doesn't care about a pretty plan. It cares about who produces on Sunday. And Nailor has been producing. 2 touchdowns against Dallas made noise. And there's more. He blocks like he means it. That keeps him on the field in any package. And even with 26 catches for 395 yards, his impact has been bigger than the stat line looks. To me, there's a risk here you can't ignore. If the team gets stubborn, it could lose a guy who became a trust option for your young quarterback. And letting that happen because you're married to the draft plan is just asking for pain later. At the same time, I get the cap side too. If he wants established receiver money, the bill comes due. Baker floated a prove-it range of $8 million to $12 million. And if it turns into something bigger, like 3 years, the tone changes fast. Then you have to look at the rest of the roster and decide where it hurts less. What would I like to see? A smart deal, a contract that respects his growth and doesn't crush flexibility. Because if Felton blows up, great. You've got depth. If he doesn't, you're not naked at the position. Simple as that, but Naylor still has to finish strong. If he disappears in the last games, the front office will use that as an excuse. And then the talk becomes, it was just a hot streak. So watch this final stretch closely. Every snap he plays is turning into negotiation. And hold on, because the next bomb involves TJ Hawkinson and serious cap money. That could shake the whole offense. Here's the thing, the cap spreadsheet is knocking and it doesn't ask permission. Alec Lewis from The Athletic reminded everyone that the Vikings head into 2026 needing to clear roughly $36 million against the salary cap. When that kind of bill shows up, a big name becomes a conversation. And the name right now is TJ Hawkinson. Nobody is saying cut him and move on as the only option. But the contract structure, the way it's set up, is heavy. His projected cap hit for 2026 is around $21 million. That puts Hawkinson among the most expensive tight ends in the league. Only David Njoku would be higher. So you can see why Minnesota, at minimum, has to rework that structure. And if the talks go sideways, there's the hard path. Cutting him could free up around $9 million. And that gives you more room to keep other expensive pieces. And look, I like Hawkinson. He arrived in the middle of 2022 and quickly became a major target. In 2023, he delivered real volume, 95 catches, 960 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Then came the brutal injury, ACL and MCL. He returned late in 2024. He played only 10 games. In 2025, his per-game yardage dropped. A lot of people see that and point fingers. But the context explains plenty. The offensive line took hits all year. When protection gets shaky, the tight end becomes a bodyguard. And the staff asked Hawkinson to pass block more than he ever has. That naturally takes the ball away from him. Simple. And there's also been a quarterback roller coaster. He had solid chemistry with Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold. Now he's catching passes in a developing J.J. McCarthy offense. There were games with Carson Wentz. There was even one with Max Brosmer in the mix. Timing changes. Reads change. And the offense looks uneven. Let me be direct. For a young quarterback, a steady tight end over the middle is like water in the desert. A guy who can win 3-4 yards and keep the drive alive changes games. That's why I lean toward a restructure. Lower the cap hit. Spread the money. Keep him in the building. I even caught myself saying, man, cap again, out loud. But it comes down to two things. Whether Hawkinson is willing to adjust the money and whether the team still sees him as a core piece. If the front office decides to cut him, the story doesn't end there. Josh Oliver is a strong blocker. Tough, physical, does the dirty work. But he's not that primary receiving threat, so you'd have to find another pass-catching tight end. Draft or free agency. And that changes the entire plan for McCarthy because the middle of the field looks different. And I want your answer in one line. Do you restructure and keep Hawkinson, or cut him and start over at the position? Now keep that momentum, because the Giants are stacking tight ends, and they signed a guy before facing the Vikings. There's a message hiding in that move. You see how weird the NFL is? You blink and the opponent makes moves one by one. The Giants signed tight end Tanner Conner to the practice squad before the game against the Vikings. It sounds small, but moves like that in December usually have a purpose. They're hunting for athletic pass catchers wherever they can find them. Conner came from the Miami Dolphins. He was released even after posting career highs. 9 receptions and 91 yards. That's not a huge stat line, but he's the type of player who can become a headache in the right role. He's 6'3", 237 pounds. He was a wide receiver who converted to tight end. That means he tends to run cleaner routes than most guys at the position, and he attacks space. In Miami, he bounced between the active roster and the practice squad, and people have said Mike McDaniel didn't really use him in the smartest way. So the Giants look at him and say, bring him in and see what happens. Especially because their offense is patched together. Malik Neighbors is out for the season. Cam Scatterbo is out too. Without those threats, they don't have much to stretch the field. Mike Kafka is calling the offense, and he likes pieces that can move around. A lighter tight end can create a mismatch on a linebacker. He can be a quick throw to help the quarterback, and he can become that easy 3rd and 5 conversion. That's where I get uneasy, because Minnesota sometimes relaxes against bad teams. We've all seen that. And if the Vikings get sloppy with communication in the middle, those short routes turn into chains moving. Now look at how crowded the Giants' tight end room is. Theo Johnson has been one of their bright spots. He has 45 catches, 528 yards, and 5 touchdowns. On the active roster, they also have Daniel Bellinger and Chrisman Hurts. On the practice squad, besides Connor, they have Zach Davidson and Maximilian Mang. Mang is a rookie learning the game. Davidson barely played last season. And Manhurts is basically a blocker, so why add another guy? Because Bellinger is near the end of his contract, and he never became the receiver they hoped for. Connor could be a quick test, even if it's only a few packages, just to pull a safety one step, and sometimes one step becomes a touchdown. I hate admitting it, but that's how it goes. Let me say this clearly. It doesn't transform the Giants, but it can change the feel of the game. If Connor gets 2 easy catches early, the stadium wakes up. And then the game gets sticky, the kind you can't put away. And the next story is exactly about that. Are the Vikings going to treat the Giants like a limited team, or are they going to let another bad movie happen in New York? All right, this is the kind of game that looks simple on paper and dangerous in real life. The Vikings head to New York to face a Giants team that is 2-12. They're out of any real dream, and that's exactly why I'm wary. Sundays like this become traps when you walk in thinking, just go through the motions. Minnesota is 6-8, no playoffs, and the draft position probably won't swing much anyway. So what's left? Pride, standards, proving you can handle business against a limited opponent. And yes, there's a ghost in this matchup. In 2022, we watched Daniel Jones own the game against Ed Donatell's defense. In the regular season, he ran and threw at will. In the playoffs, it got worse. That was a punch to the gut for the purple and gold crowd. And the wound opened again when Jones ended up in Minnesota, learned, and then left for the Colts. Weird story, painful to remember. But the point here is not revenge, it's discipline. Because the Giants changed quarterbacks, and the danger still looks familiar. They went through the Russell Wilson experience and the Jameis Winston experience, but now the guy is Jackson Dart, young, quick legs, and reckless in the way that scares you. He completes 62.5% of his passes. He has 13 touchdown passes and only 4 interceptions. On the ground, he has 400 rushing yards and 7 more touchdowns. He doesn't avoid contact, he seeks it. And if you don't tackle cleanly, that turns into long drives and an ugly game. Let me be honest with you. I do not want to see Dart turn into Daniel Jones against the Vikings again. The defense has to set the edge. They have to keep eyes on the scramble, and the first hit has to finish. If it turns into arm tackles, he slips out. Then the stadium wakes up. Their sideline gets life. And you lose control of the rhythm. On offense, the demand is simple too. Kevin O'Connell has to call a game that doesn't put everything on J.J. McCarthy's shoulders. Even with the season winding down, you're still building habits. And good habits are running with purpose, leaning on play action, and avoiding stupid turnovers. Because if you hand extra possessions to a bad team, you manufacture chaos. And then you're begging to get embarrassed on the road in your final trip of the year. And here's one more thing worth repeating. The Giants have been without Malik Neighbors for weeks. They have no reason to hang around in this game. If Minnesota shows up locked in, they can bury it early. If they show up loose, they give hope. And hope in the NFL is poison. All of this pulls the conversation to a bigger place. When you combine cap pressure, roster decisions, and a game that tests maturity, you start to see what this team really is and what it still needs to become. I swear, being a fan never gives your heart a day off. You hear Breece Hall rumors that could jumpstart the run game. You see Jalen Naylor earning trust and turning into a contract decision. Then you've got cap pressure hitting TJ Hawkinson. And on Sunday, you've got the Giants, with Tanner Connor arriving and Jackson Dart trying to cause trouble with his legs. If Minnesota wants respect, they have to play with real standards and make decisions without fear. Drop your take, because this space belongs to everyone who lives and breathes Vikings football. Stay tuned. SKOL Vikings, let's go!